Black woman stories always begin with being overlooked. But this time, she won't stay invisible. Layla Brooks adjusted the straps of her janitor's cart, her hands slightly trembling as she approached the marble-floored lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. The scent of lemon polish clung to her gloves, and the dull squeak of her shoes echoed like shame against the glassy quiet of the luxury hall. "Excuse me," a sharp voice cut across the space like a slap. Layla froze mid-step. A woman in a crimson cocktail dress stood in front of the front desk clutching a toppled wine glass. Scarlet droplets bled into the ivory carpet. "This girl just ran right into me," the woman huffed, turning to the gathering crowd. She wasn't watching. "Isn't there some standard for staff here?" Layla blinked, stunned. She had barely stepped out of the service elevator. I just got here, ma'am. I didn't." "Oh, please." The woman rolled her eyes. "Save the excuses. Can someone call your supervisor?" Heads turned. Suits and heels paused to stare. The concierge looked away. Layla lowered her eyes and reached into her cart for the cloth. Kneeling down, she dabbed at the spilled wine, her dark curls falling over her face to hide the burn in her cheeks. Then a man's voice rang out, calm, low, and precise. Actually, it was the woman in red who bumped her drink while arguing on the phone. "I saw the whole thing." Silence followed. Layla glanced up. He stood apart from the others, tall, relaxed, maybe mid-30s. He wore no name-brand logos, no ostentatious watch. Just a charcoal button-down sleeves rolled a book tucked under one arm. The woman flushed. "Excuse me, and who are you?" "Just someone who prefers truth over noise," he said, not looking at her. Then he knelt down next to Layla. "May I?" he asked, reaching for a second towel from her cart. She nodded hesitantly. Together they worked quietly side by side, while the crowd dissolved into murmurs and retreats. The woman in red scoffed and stormed off, heels clacking like empty threats. "You didn't have to do that," Layla whispered, eyes still on the stain. "I didn't," the man replied, voice warm. "But I've seen enough people clean up messes they didn't make. Figured it's time someone helped." She looked up, startled. His eyes were steady, gray-blue, thoughtful. There was a moment thin as breath, but it felt like something passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but human. Scene. He stood handing back the towel. "What's your name?" "Layla. Layla Brooks." He nodded slowly. "Layla, pretty name. And you are—" He offered a slight smile. "Just someone passing through." Before she could ask more, he was gone, disappeared into the sea of elegance and entitlement. That night, Layla sat on the thin mattress in her shared apartment above the laundromat. Maria, her roommate and fellow hotel employee, leaned against the window, chewing sunflower seeds. "You really don't know who he was?" Maria asked, wide-eyed. "A guy kneeling in a hotel lobby, helping clean a carpet?" Layla shrugged. "He didn't give a name. He was just kind." "That's either a saint or a sociopath." Maria snorted. "Still, damn. That's rare." Layla smiled faintly. She didn't believe in fairy tales, but something about him stuck. Not his looks, not even his defense of her. It was how he'd made her feel, like she wasn't dirt on someone's shoe. Like maybe her simple life wasn't so shameful after all. Later that evening, as she unpacked her laundry uniform, a small folded note slipped out from her apron pocket. It wasn't hers. She opened it. "Penthouse 48, rooftop terrace. Just a cup of tea." Layla's heart stumbled. She reread it again and again, unsure if it was meant for her, if it was a mistake, or if he had put it there. Penthouse. No way. She wasn't the kind of girl who got invited to penthouses, and certainly not by men who read books, defended janitors, and smelled like cedarwood and quiet secrets. But the handwriting, simple slanted, matched the impression he left behind. Warm, direct, no pressure. She stared at the note long after Maria fell asleep, the city humming outside. And against every instinct, every voice in her head that screamed, "Don't be foolish," she placed the note under her pillow. Just for one night. Just to imagine what it might feel like to be invited. Black woman stories don't always begin with miracles. Sometimes they begin with curiosity and courage to knock. It was nearly midnight when Layla stood in front of the elevator, marked private access, penthouse only. She wasn't supposed to be there. Everything about the space told her that. The marble under her sneakers felt colder, the air too still. She checked the note again, heart thudding like it didn't belong in her chest. Just a cup of tea, she whispered to herself. It wasn't a date, not a setup, not a fairy tale. Just tea. The elevator dinged. She stepped in before she could change her mind. As the numbers climbed, her reflection in the golden panels stared back, brown, skin-tired eyes, hair pulled into a frizzy bun. No makeup, no perfume, just her. What am I doing? The elevator opened into a quiet, dim hallway. A soft jazz tune drifted from behind one door, penthouse 48. She knocked. A second passed, then two. Then the door opened, and there he was. Not in a suit, not in formal wear, but in a faded navy t-shirt and joggers. Barefoot. He blinked surprised, then smiled, not wide, not flashy, but honest. You came. I wasn't sure if I should. He opened the door wider. Still not sure if you should. Layla bit her lip. Still not sure who you are. He nodded thoughtfully. Fair enough. Let's start with tea. The rooftop terrace was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Not lavish, but peaceful. Wooden planters, string lights swaying in the breeze. A teapot rested on a low glass table already steaming. I didn't know if you'd actually come, he said, pouring 2 cups. But I hoped you would. Why? Layla asked, fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic. He sat across from her, elbows on knees. Because you were the only person today who didn't pretend, he said. No performance, no pretense. Layla tilted her head. You say that like you know what pretense looks like. His smile tightened. I've been surrounded by it most of my life. A pause stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just quiet. Wind stirred her curls. She tucked one behind her ear, self-conscious. You live here, she asked. Sometimes. Travel for work. Something like that. You're vague. I'm private. Layla exhaled a half laugh. Okay, Mr. Mysterious. He raised an eyebrow. And you always work night shifts. She nodded. It pays more. And it keeps me from having to fake smiles for tourists all day. What would you do if you didn't have to clean hotel lobbies at 11 p.m.? Layla paused. No one had ever asked her that. She stared into her tea. I used to want to be a teacher, she said quietly. Elementary. I like kids. They're honest. He didn't interrupt, just listened. But college costs money, and life kept happening. Rent, medical bills. My mom. She trailed off. She didn't owe him her story. But still she spoke. She got sick. Past 2 years ago. I had to drop everything to take care of her. And after that it felt like the world kept moving, and I never caught up. His voice was soft. I'm sorry. She shrugged. It's just life. But it shouldn't be, he said. Not the kind that buries dreams and calls it adulthood. She met his eyes. For the second time that day, she felt seen, not pitied, not observed, but understood. You talk like someone who's had things handed to him, she said, not unkindly, but also like someone who's not impressed by them anymore. That surprised him. A slow grin pulled at his lips. You read people well, Ms. Brooks. She smiled faintly. Comes from mopping floors while listening to hundreds of feet walk by. They stayed like that for another hour. Talking. Not flirting, not pretending. Just sharing space neither of them knew they needed. Eventually, Layla stood. It's late. He rose with her. Thank you for coming. She hesitated. Then you never told me your name. He held her gaze. Daniel. Just Daniel, for now. She nodded. Good night, just Daniel. Good night, Layla. As she rode the elevator down the city, lights winked beyond the glass. Something inside her had shifted, not dramatically, not with sparks, but like a window cracked open in a room she'd forgotten had air. Not because he was rich, she didn't even know that yet, but because for the first time in a long time, someone had made space for her story. And that was rarer than any penthouse. The next morning at Grand Plaza, everything returned to its usual rhythm. White gloves, silver trays, the muted sound of heels on marble. Layla pushed her cart along the hallway of the executive floor, her body moving on autopilot. But her mind lingered on string lights and steam rising from teacups. On the way, he had listened not with impatience, but intention. She didn't expect to see him again. Maybe it was a one-night kindness, a brief crossing of paths in the strange geometry of the universe. Still, she found herself glancing toward the private elevator more than once. Girl, Maria whispered that afternoon during their break in the linen room. Tell me everything. Layla raised an eyebrow. About, don't play. I saw you floating in here this morning like some Hallmark Channel heroine. Did you go? Layla hesitated. It was just tea. Maria's jaw dropped. You actually went? I knocked. He answered. We talked. Talked. Layla sipped her coffee, then shrugged, and drank tea. That's it. Maria groaned. Okay, you have no imagination. What's he like? Is he weird? Rich married. Layla shook her head. None of that. He's just quiet. Thoughtful. Maria squinted. Thoughtful men don't live in penthouses. Maybe he's the exception. Maria rolled her eyes. Girl, we clean this hotel. We know what lives in penthouses, and it ain't humility. Layla chuckled. Well, maybe this one's different. By early evening, she was back on duty restocking hand towels in the executive spa suite. Her earbuds played an old Nina Simone track as she folded, letting the rhythm slow her mind. Then a knock. She turned. Daniel stood at the doorway, no suit, no security, just a canvas messenger bag slung over one shoulder. Thought I might find you here, he said. Layla blinked. How did you... Trade secret, he said, holding up a takeout bag. I owe you lunch. I didn't ask for that. I know. That's why it's a gift. She looked at him uncertain. Why? He paused, then spoke with quiet honesty. Because I liked last night. Because I don't want to pretend I didn't. The room suddenly felt smaller, warmer. She stepped aside. 10 minutes, she said. That's all I've got. He grinned. I'll take it. They sat cross-legged on the floor between folded robes and lavender-scented towels. He unpacked 2 containers of Thai noodles, a can of peach soda, and a plastic fork. This is the weirdest spa meal ever, Layla said. Great, he replied. We'll tell the grandkids. She rolled her eyes but smiled. After they ate, he lingered. Not in a way that imposed, but like someone not ready to leave a space that felt rare. Do you ever let people get close? He asked gently. Layla looked at him for a long beat. Not usually. Why not? Because most people aren't here for me, she said. They're here to feel better about themselves. And me, I don't know yet, she admitted. He nodded slowly. Fair. Before he left, Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out a slim book. The Little Prince, he said. My mother used to read this to me when the world got too loud. Layla took it, fingers brushing the cover. Page 43, he said. Read it when you're alone. She watched him go, the scent of lemongrass still in the air, the softest trace of kindness behind him. That night in her room above the laundromat, she curled under her blanket and flipped to page 43. It read, What is essential is invisible to the eye. She stared at those words until they blurred, not because they were poetic, but because for once someone didn't need their eyes to see her. And for the first time in a long, hard, quiet life, that was enough. You can't fake quiet comfort. It either lives between 2 people or it doesn't. Over the next few days, something unusual happened. Layla began to look forward to something. Not a paycheck, not her one-day off rotation, but to the possibility of a note, a cookie, a quiet knock. She didn't tell Maria, didn't tell Jen either. Some things lose their magic the moment you say them out loud. The third time she returned to Penthouse 48, Daniel was cooking. No chefs, no expensive wine. Just a skillet, a wooden spoon, and the faint smell of garlic and something creamy. You cook? She asked, surprised. I try, he said, stirring. But don't judge me by the sauce. She leaned against the counter. No promises. He served her a bowl of linguine with lemon parmesan sauce and exactly 3 cherry tomatoes cut into perfect halves. She raised an eyebrow. This is oddly precise. I like control in the kitchen, he said, It's one of the few places where rules make sense. That line landed heavier than it should have. She filed it away. They ate on the floor again, this time, inside cross-legged, with the city glowing beyond the window wall. Daniel asked her what her favorite childhood memory was. She told him about the time her mom let her skip school to watch clouds in the park and eat peanut butter sandwiches. They'd counted how many looked like dogs, or castles, or people with funny hats. She said dreams were easier to believe in when you looked at them from below, Layla said. I didn't understand that until I got older. Daniel smiled quietly. She sounds like someone I wish I'd met. You'd have liked her. She didn't care about resumes. He chuckled. Mine's just a list of things I wish didn't impress people. Layla looked at him then. Really looked. Everything about him said understated. Not like a man hiding something bad. Like a man hiding something sacred. You're not just passing through, are you? She asked. Daniel's fork paused midair. I am, he said carefully. But not the way you think. She waited. He didn't elaborate. After they finished dinner, Layla offered to help wash dishes. He refused, but she insisted. As she scrubbed, she asked over her shoulder, You ever been in love? He didn't answer right away. Once he said eventually, But I think I mistook proximity for intimacy. She smiled softly. That's honest. Your turn, he said. Layla rinsed the plate and set it down. I've had interest, she said. People who wanted something. But it always felt like they wanted a version of me I didn't recognize. Daniel leaned against the counter. Maybe because most people love reflections, not real people. She turned. And you? He shrugged. I've been learning to love without possession. That sentence sat in the air like a challenge or a kindness. She didn't know which. Before she left that night, Daniel handed her a small paper bag. No pressure, he said. She peeked inside. A book. The Alchemist. A story about someone who goes looking for treasure far away, he said, and finds it right where he started. Layla clutched the book, oddly touched. Thanks, she murmured. As she stepped into the elevator, Daniel called after her. Next time, I'll let you bring the tea. Later that night, Maria was already in bed snoring. Layla sat on the edge of her mattress, flipped open the book, and found a note tucked inside. Sometimes the universe conspires to help us meet the people who show us what we've forgotten about ourselves. No signature, but she didn't need one. She read the first chapter before sleep, finally found her deeper, quieter than usual. And for the first time in years, her dreams weren't of survival. They were of sky, of peanut butter sandwiches, and of a stranger who saw her before she said a single thing. She didn't know his last name, but somehow she trusted him more than men who handed her their business cards. The fifth night she visited, rain drizzled over the city in silver streaks. Layla had just finished folding bathrobes on the third floor when she found another note slipped inside the staff elevator. If you're free tonight, no expectations, just a roof and the sound of rain. She didn't hesitate this time. There was something strangely steadying about it now, this quiet ritual between them. No games, no grand gestures, just invitations to exist. When Daniel opened the door, his hair was damp and tousled from the storm. He handed her a towel before she could say hello. Thought you might hate wet socks as much as I do? He smiled. I do, she said, slipping off her shoes. I also hate floor heaters that make the room smell like plastic. You're in luck, he said. This one smells like fake cinnamon. She laughed. It was that kind of laugh that comes from the chest, not the throat. The kind that sneaks up when you're not trying to be charming, just real. They sat by the glass wall, rain tracing slow lines between them and the city beyond. Daniel handed her a bowl of something warm, spiced lentils, lemon, and soft bread. It's a comfort recipe, he said. When my head gets loud. Layla tasted it. It's simple. He smiled. Like you. She glanced at him sharply, but his tone was soft, teasing. Simple as in small, he added quickly. It's unburdened. She didn't answer, but she didn't disagree. After they ate, Daniel reached into a side drawer and pulled out a chessboard. Let me guess, Layla said. You play like a Wall Street analyst. He grinned. Actually, I suck, but I like the quiet it brings. They played, or tried. Half the time they forgot whose move it was, because the conversation drifted again to their worst jobs. She once cleaned vomit off a chandelier at prom season. Their secret talents. He could identify 30 types of jazz trumpet solos and their guilty pleasures. She loved Lifetime movies. He liked diner pancakes at midnight. Time melted. By the time she checked her phone, it was 1:13 a.m. She stood brushing imaginary crumbs from her lap. I should go. Daniel nodded but didn't move to open the door just yet. Instead, he looked at her, not in the way of a man hoping for a kiss, but like someone trying to memorize a moment before it passed. What she asked? He hesitated. Then, has anyone ever told you you're peaceful to be around? Layla blinked. Most people call me quiet or forgettable. Then they weren't listening. Silence hung between them. Not awkward, just full. Then he added, sometimes I feel like I talk too much around you. You don't, she said. I think it's because I don't have to perform. She tilted her head. You think you usually do. He nodded, and in that nod was something deeper than she expected, something wounded, something familiar. Before she left, she asked for the first time, what do you do, Daniel? He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled half real, half evasive. Let's say I invest in things that matter. She raised an eyebrow. That's vague. That's fair, he said. But it's honest. Layla thought about pressing more. But then she remembered how her mother used to say, sometimes people only show you what they trust you to hold. And he had already given her more than most. She nodded. Okay, she said. He walked her to the elevator like always. But this time, before the doors closed, he added one line that stayed with her long into the night. Next time, I'll tell you about the boy I used to be. And with that, the doors shut. That night, curled under her thrift store blanket, Layla stared at the ceiling. She didn't know his full name. She didn't know what he did or where he went in the mornings. She didn't even know if this was real or just a pocket of fantasy tucked inside her ordinary life. But she knew how she felt. Safe, seen, and for once not small. It started with a slip. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a receipt. Layla found it while helping Daniel organize books on his rooftop shelves, his idea of a low-key Sunday. They were halfway through rearranging first editions and poetry collections when she noticed a slip of paper wedged between 2 volumes of Baldwin and Coates. Curious, she pulled it out. It was folded, crinkled, printed with a hotel logo she didn't recognize. The name on it wasn't Daniel. It was Westwood Holdings. Mr. Daniel R. Westwood. Her fingers froze. The surname hit her like cold water. Westwood as in the Westwood Foundation, the Westwood Real Estate Group, the Westwood Tower that loomed just 5 blocks from her neighborhood laundromat. She blinked. Her lips moved silently, trying to match the casual man in sweatpants and jazz playlists. With that name, Daniel noticed. What's that? He asked, reaching for the receipt. She handed it over slowly. He saw it, paused, and in that pause she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not guilt, not arrogance, but resignation. You weren't supposed to see that, he said, folding it quietly. No kidding, she replied, her voice colder than she intended. Daniel exhaled. Layla. So it is you, she asked, still holding his gaze. Westwood. As in the Westwood. Yes, and you never thought to mention that. I didn't lie. You just let me believe you were nobody. I never said I was nobody, Daniel replied softly but firmly. You assume that because I didn't lead with power. Layla stepped back slightly. Her heart pounded. This wasn't about the name. Not really. It was about trust. She thought she had found someone who saw her without judgment. Someone simple. Someone safe. But the truth was, he had been walking behind tinted glass the whole time. You've been watching me work. Eat lunch in the staff room. Take the service elevator, she said quietly. And all this time, you've had a key to the penthouse and the top floor of half the city. Daniel didn't move. I wanted you to know me without that noise, he said. She gave a bitter laugh. That noise is your life. Your name built the hotel I mop every night. A beat of silence. Then so what now, he asked. Not pleading, just honest. Layla didn't answer. She grabbed her coat and moved toward the door. Before she left, she turned back. You should have told me who you were, Daniel. And with that, she walked into the elevator past the same marble he'd defended her on weeks ago, only now her footsteps felt heavier than they ever had. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with its usual quiet tension, vacuumed rugs, polished concierge smiles, and money that whispered instead of screamed. But none of it mattered, because now every kindness Daniel had shown her began to feel curated. She didn't know what was real anymore. Later that night in her apartment above the laundromat, Maria found her sitting on the floor beside her bed. The lights off the window cracked open to let the noise of the street in. What happened? Maria asked. Layla didn't look up. He's a Westwood. Maria blinked. Wait, Westwood. Layla nodded. Maria sat down beside her, stunned. Like, multi-billion real estate generational dynasty, your kids won't have to work Westwood. Yep. Girl. Silence. Then Maria asked the question that had already carved a hollow space in Layla's chest. You think he was playing you? Layla shook her head. I don't know. But it doesn't feel clean anymore. Daniel didn't call, didn't text, didn't slip her a note through her cart. And Layla didn't return to the penthouse. She showed up for work, cleaned her floors, avoided the executive suites, and pretended that everything was fine. But everything had changed. She wasn't angry, not exactly. It wasn't that kind of betrayal. He hadn't lied. He just let her build trust in a version of him that wasn't the whole truth. That hurt in a quieter way. The kind that didn't sting, but lingered like damp clothes under a coat you didn't realize was soaked through. 2 days passed. Then 3. Maria noticed her silence, of course. You want me to fight him? She asked, holding a mop like a sword. Layla gave a weak smile. It's not that kind of drama. Maria raised an eyebrow. No such thing as small drama when a billionaire's involved. On the 4th day, Layla got assigned to clean the spa terrace, a place she hadn't been near since that first bowl of noodles and laughter. She worked fast-focused, trying not to think about jazz or tea or folded books with handwritten notes. She was halfway through organizing the towel shelf when she heard the softest footstep behind her. She turned. Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes unsure. She didn't speak. Neither did he. For a moment, the only sound between them was the quiet hiss of eucalyptus mist from the spa vents. Then he said, I wasn't trying to hide who I am. Layla looked down. You just didn't want me to treat you differently. Yes, but you didn't give me the chance to decide that. Daniel winced slightly. I didn't think I'd get this far with you, he admitted. The rooftop, the tea, I thought it'd be one night and then we'd drift. But you kept showing up. And I liked who I was around you. She looked up, meeting his eyes. No titles, no press, no performance. You think I'm impressed by wealth? She asked, voice steady. No, he said. I think you're repelled by it, because of what it's taken from you. That stopped her, because it wasn't wrong. She sat down on the spa bench, suddenly too tired to stand. I grew up 2 blocks from one of your towers, she said. We used to joke that the lights in those buildings could pay our rent for a year. Daniel sat beside her. I believe it. She stared ahead. Your world isn't built for women like me, Daniel. It wasn't designed to see me. I know. Then why me? His answer came without hesitation. Because you see things no one else bothers to. Because you made me laugh with my guard down. Because you look at me like a person, not a project. And because I like who I am when I'm around you. Her throat tightened. But she didn't cry. Not here. Not yet. They sat there for a long while. 2 people on opposite ends of a system somehow sitting on the same bench. Then Daniel asked, Can I show you something? She hesitated. Where? Just down the street. It's still daylight. No drama. She gave him a long, searching look, then nodded once. Fine. 1 hour, and I'm paying for my own coffee. Daniel smiled. Deal. They walked to a corner cafe 6 blocks from the hotel. It wasn't fancy. Vinyl booths, chalkboard menus, too much cinnamon in the air. He ordered black coffee and lemon cake. She got hot chocolate with oat milk and no whipped cream. They sat near the window. Daniel pulled a folded blueprint from his bag. This is a sketch for a project I've been fighting to build, he said. Layla leaned in. It was a community center, reading rooms, art classes, affordable childcare. In the old mechanics building on 13th, she asked. He nodded. The city wants to turn it into condos. I've been lobbying to buy it out, redesign the space for the neighborhood. Layla blinked. What? Daniel looked at her. Because when I was 15, my father tore down a park to build Westwood Plaza. And I stood there watching kids cry as bulldozers flattened their basketball court. He paused. I've been trying to undo that version of myself ever since. Layla sat back, stunned. It was the first time he'd offered her a piece of his past without asking for permission to hide it. And it made her realize something. She didn't need him to be perfect. She just needed him to be honest. After the cafe, they didn't return to the hotel. They just walked past the food trucks near 8th Avenue, through a tiny bookstore that still smelled like old pages and floor wax, and finally into the park behind the church. Layla stopped beneath a willow tree. I used to come here when things got too loud, she said. My mom would let me sit on the swings long past dark if I was quiet and didn't talk back. Daniel smiled. You ever break that rule? Once she said, a playful glint in her eye. She caught me humming Destiny's Child. Grounded me for a week. He laughed. Not because the story was funny, but because the picture of her as a girl with stubborn eyes and a soft heart made sense. They sat on a bench, the evening light filtering gold through the leaves. Layla broke the silence. Daniel. Yeah, I don't want to be your escape. He turned toward her. I didn't mean to use you that way. I know, she said. But people like you get used to moving through the world without consequences. You don't always realize how deep your shadows fall. He flinched, not out of guilt, but recognition. You're right, he said. And I want to be better than that. Then be. They sat with those words, simple but weighty. Then Daniel said something that surprised her. You don't have to trust me again. She looked over. But I'd like to earn it if you'll let me. Layla studied his face, the soft worry behind his calm, the way he didn't reach for her hand or lean in. He just waited. That more than any apology felt real. I'm not saying yes, she said. He nodded. I'm not asking you to. I don't want this to become another version of charity. You being around me because it makes you feel grounded. He swallowed. That's fair. You want me in your world, she asked. He nodded. Then don't hide mine. The next day, Daniel showed up outside her apartment. Not in a black SUV, not with flowers, but with 2 plastic cups of street cart lemonade and a book tucked under his arm. Breakfast on the stoop, he asked. She stared at him, stunned. You know this isn't safe, right? People from the hotel lived nearby. I'm not ashamed to be seen with you, he said plainly. You say that now. I'll say it again tomorrow. They sat on the steps. The lemonade was too sweet, the sun too high. But Daniel didn't fidget. He just handed her the book. A Wrinkle in Time. Another favorite, she asked. He nodded. It's about a girl who saves the world by being exactly who she is. She smiled despite herself. This is your apology, isn't it? It's part 1, he said. Part 2 comes with time. That evening, Maria found her in the kitchen humming. Okay, Maria said, folding her arms. So either you found a new man or someone's making gumbo. Layla laughed. Neither. Just thinking. Maria narrowed her eyes. About the billionaire. Layla hesitated. Then he's showing up. With humility. Maria raised an eyebrow and I'm not letting the story write itself this time. That night, Layla sat on her mattress, A Wrinkle in Time open on her lap, but unread. She wasn't sure where this was going. Maybe nowhere. Maybe somewhere fragile and temporary. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid to find out. Because now she knew who he was. And more importantly, she knew who she was. The first photo showed up on a gossip blog at 9:16 a.m. Grainy, slightly out of focus, but unmistakable. Daniel Westwood, in sweats, sitting on a stoop in Midtown next to a woman in a housekeeping uniform. The headline read, Billionaire Westwood seen slumming it. Mystery woman, sparks curiosity. Layla didn't see it first. Maria did. She burst into the staff locker room, waving her phone like a torch. Girl, you made it to page 6. Layla blinked, still half in uniform. What? Maria shoved the phone in her face. This you, right? Please tell me this is you. Layla stared at the screen, her stomach flipping. She barely recognized herself. The angle was bad, the lighting worse, but there she was, mid-laugh, holding a plastic cup sitting beside Daniel like she belonged there. And now, the whole world had questions. By noon, Daniel called. She didn't pick up. At 3:42 p.m., he sent a message. Did you see it? I'm so sorry. Let's talk. She still didn't respond, because the truth was, she didn't know how to respond. This wasn't the rooftop. This was the real world, with headlines, screenshots, anonymous comments. By 6:00 p.m., her supervisor called her into the office. We're getting calls, he said, shifting uncomfortably. Some guests are asking questions about inappropriate employee conduct. Layla stared at him. You mean sitting on a stoop with someone? He flushed. It's not me, Layla. You know how these places work. Yes, she did. She nodded quietly. I understand. That night, Layla didn't go home. She took the train to her sister's place across town. Jen was out with the kids, but the apartment was quiet and smelled like oatmeal soap. Layla sat on the couch scrolling through article after article. Some were mocking, some were curious, but a few were cruel. If you're going to date someone from the people, at least find someone polished. Westwood's new project, Clean Up Girl, Clean Up World. Layla closed her phone and stared at the ceiling. She had worked so hard to stay small enough not to be targeted. And now, without asking for it, she'd become visible in all the wrong ways. The knock came at 10:13 p.m. She opened the door expecting Jen. It was Daniel. No driver, no suit, just jeans, a black hoodie, and eyes that looked like he hadn't slept. Please don't shut the door, he said before she could speak. Layla crossed her arms. How did you know I was here? I didn't, I guessed, Maria texted. Layla narrowed her eyes. You've got Maria's number? He half smiled. Apparently she's Team Daniel now. She sighed, stepped back, and let him in. He didn't sit, just stood awkwardly in the middle of the living room. I'm sorry, he said. You said that already. I know. Layla looked at him, really looked. Not the man on her stoop, not the name in bold font. Just him. Tired, worried, trying. She nodded toward the couch. Sit, then talk. He sat. I didn't plan for this to go public, he began. I know. I tried to protect it. Us. But I guess I should have known better. You should have, she said calmly, but not because of who you are. He blinked. You should have known better because of what I am. I don't come with PR training, Daniel. I don't know how to smile through being humiliated on the internet. He exhaled, folding his hands. What can I do? Layla stared at him, then said, Tell me why you didn't disappear when the story broke. Daniel looked up, and for the first time, there wasn't charm in his voice, only clarity. Because you're not a story, he said. You're the person I wake up thinking about, the one who makes this city feel like it's not trying to devour me. He leaned forward. And I don't want to build anything business, reputation, future that doesn't have you somewhere in it. Layla didn't respond right away, because part of her still wanted to run, but a bigger part, a deeper, quieter one, wanted to be seen like that. Not by the cameras, not by the comments, by him. So she said, Then don't try to protect me with silence. Help me protect myself with truth. And Daniel for once didn't say anything clever. He just nodded and stayed. The next morning, Layla returned to work. She walked through the hotel lobby in her uniform, same black pants, same white blouse, but somehow it felt like armor now. She saw the stares, felt the whispers. The concierge glanced up. The bellboy fumbled his greeting. Even her manager straightened awkwardly when she passed. But she kept walking, because shame only lives where silence lives. And she had made her decision. Daniel kept his distance that day. He sent no messages, made no surprise appearances, but she knew he was waiting. So when her shift ended, she didn't go home. She went up to the penthouse. He opened the door with that quiet expression she was starting to know better, the one that meant he wasn't sure what version of her would be on the other side. She stepped in without a word, walked to the rooftop. The city stretched beneath them like a question neither had answered yet. Layla stood at the railing, then turned. I want to speak. Daniel blinked. Speak. To the world. My way. Once. On my terms. He stepped closer. You don't owe them anything. I'm not doing it for them, she said. I'm doing it for me. The next day, with Daniel's help but not his name attached, Layla recorded a short video from the rooftop. No filters, no makeup, just her. She looked straight into the camera and said, "Hi, I'm Layla Brooks. I clean rooms, I fold sheets. I grew up 5 blocks from where you drop your valet keys. I never asked to be part of anyone's headline. But since I'm here, I want to say something. I'm not embarrassed to sit on a stoop with someone I care about. I'm not ashamed of where I come from. And if kindness, simplicity, or laughter ever made someone stop and take a photo, that says more about the person holding the camera than it does about me." The video went up on a small storytelling channel Daniel funded anonymously. Within 12 hours, it had over 300,000 views. By the next morning, the same blogs that had mocked her were backtracking. From housekeeping to headline. The quiet strength of Layla Brooks, she spoke, and everyone listened. But Layla didn't read the articles this time. She was too busy at work, where for once no one dared to whisper within earshot. Maria caught her by the service elevator and held up her phone. "Girl," she said, eyes wide, "you're trending on Black Twitter." Layla smirked. "Is that a good thing?" Maria grinned. "It's the best thing." Then she hugged her. "Not tight, just long enough." "You good?" Maria asked. Layla nodded. "Better." That night, Daniel met her outside her apartment again. This time, she didn't ask why he came. She just held open the gate and let him in. They sat on the same steps where the first photo had been taken, sipping hot cocoa from paper cups. This time, no one snapped a picture. Or maybe they did, but Layla didn't care. She had stopped living in fear of the world seeing her. Now the world had seen her truth, and it hadn't destroyed her. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Layla raised an eyebrow. "Another secret identity?" He smiled. "No, a job offer." She blinked. "What?" "It's from a nonprofit I fund. They're starting a city storytelling initiative, teaching media skills, public speaking, documentary basics. You'd be great at it." "I'm not a speaker. You just proved you are." Layla looked down at the paper. Her name was typed at the top, and for the first time she saw it not just as a nameplate, but as a voice. She didn't say yes immediately. Layla took the paper home, placed it on her nightstand, and stared at it for 2 days. It wasn't fear holding her back. It was the weight of being seen differently. If she took the role, if she walked into a new room as someone with influence, with potential, she'd have to let go of being invisible. And being invisible had strangely protected her. On the 3rd morning, she woke early. No alarm, just a quiet certainty. She called the number on the letter and said, "I'm in." The woman on the other end sounded delighted. "You'll start with an intro session. No pressure. Just you, a microphone, and a room full of people who want to be heard." Layla smiled, nervous but solid. "Sounds like home," she said. When she told Maria, her friend screamed loud enough to shake the pipes. "You better start charging for hugs now," Maria said, "because soon you're going to be too famous to fold towels." Layla laughed. "I'll never give up towel corners. They're sacred." But something in her chest loosened. This wasn't just about stepping forward. It was about stepping up for herself, for her mom, for every woman who'd ever been told not your place. Daniel took her to dinner to celebrate. Not in a tower, not on a rooftop, but at a tiny Haitian restaurant in Crown Heights with 2 tables and the best plantains Layla had ever tasted. No one looked at them funny. No one whispered. They just ate, laughed, and let the ordinary moments fill the air like music. After the meal, they walked 3 blocks to her old middle school. She pointed to the rusted bike rack still chained to the same pole. "I used to sit there with a notebook and pretend I was going to be a novelist." Daniel smiled. "What stopped you?" She shrugged. "Life, rent, reality." "You're writing now," he said. "Am I?" "You wrote your truth. People listen." She paused, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess I did." Later that week, her first storytelling workshop began. Layla stood at the front of the room, heart pounding, a circle of folding chairs and eager, skeptical faces watching her. She took a deep breath. "My name is Layla," she began, and I used to believe that my story didn't matter. She looked around. But I've learned that sometimes the world doesn't need perfection. It just needs someone willing to speak. There was silence. Then a hand went up. Then another. And the circle began to ripple open. Daniel didn't attend. Not because he wasn't proud, but because he knew this moment wasn't about him. It was about Layla building something that belonged only to her. That night he texted, "Saw the photos. You looked like you were flying." She replied, "It's scary, but good scary." Then added, "Also, I still hate heels." He responded with a single line, "Barefoot looks good on you anyway." She smiled, not because it was flirty, but because it felt like home. The next weekend she visited her mom's grave. She hadn't been in months. She brought a single flower and sat cross-legged on the grass. "Guess what, Mama?" she whispered. "I'm not cleaning up other people's stories anymore. I'm writing mine." The wind rustled through the trees like applause. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a girl trying to be someone. She felt like a woman who had arrived. Not because of a man, not because of a moment, but because of a decision. To show up for herself. The invitation arrived in a thick cream envelope with gold foil edges. Inside, you are cordially invited to the Westwood Annual Fundraising Gala. Friday 7 p.m., Westwood Tower Ballroom. Layla stared at it for a full minute before flipping it over, half expecting it to say, "Just kidding." She called Daniel. "I thought you hated those events," she said. "I do," he replied. "But this time you'd be the only reason I'd survive it." Layla laughed nervously. "Me in a ballroom full of billionaires and magazine editors." "You've been in tougher rooms," he said gently. "You just didn't have a dress code." 2 days later, a box arrived at her apartment. Inside a gown. Not glittery, not loud. Just sleek, deep emerald silk with simple lines that said, "I know who I am." No note, just a small card, "Only if you feel like it." She held it against her body and stood in front of the mirror, not as a fantasy, but as a possibility. The night of the gala, Maria came over to do her makeup. "Girl," she said, fanning herself, "you about to make stock prices rise." Layla rolled her eyes, but smiled. Her hair was pinned up soft curls left around her face, her lips a deep burgundy. No sparkle, just strength. Maria stepped back, hand to her heart. "You look like justice in a dress." That line made Layla pause, because maybe that's what she was becoming. Not a symbol, but a mirror. To every woman who'd been unseen, underestimated, and still walked in anyway. The ballroom was a chandeliered palace. People sparkled. Cameras flashed. And then the hush, because Layla Brooks had just walked in. Daniel was already there, standing tall, in a charcoal suit, no tie. He didn't look surprised. He looked proud. He offered her his arm, and she took it. Not because she needed support, but because he had become a partner, not a protector. They mingled. Sort of. Daniel introduced her to a few key people. One tried to shake her hand too hard. Another smiled with too much pity. But Layla handled it. With grace. With quiet wit. With the kind of dignity that made even the most polished guests pause and rethink their assumptions. And then came the moment she hadn't expected. A woman approached, tall, confident, clearly expensive. She extended a manicured hand. "You're the one from the video," she said. The cleaner turned speaker. Layla hesitated, then nodded. "I am." The woman didn't smile, but she didn't sneer either. "You shook the room," she said. "Keep doing that." And then she walked away. Daniel leaned in. That was Margot Lane, editor-in-chief of Epic. Layla blinked. "Did I just get approved?" "Worse," he whispered. "You just got noticed." Halfway through the night, Daniel was called away to speak to investors. Layla wandered to the balcony for air. That's when she heard the voices. Not loud, just enough. "She cleans floors, and now she's arm candy." "Bet this is his rebrand the Billionaire strategy." Layla froze. The voices belonged to two women in sequin gowns sipping champagne, like it made them more elegant. One laughed. "She probably thinks this means something." The other said, "He always gets bored, though. It's the Westwood curse." Layla didn't move, didn't cry, didn't flinch. She just turned and walked back inside. And for the first time all night she felt tired. Not of the people, not of the judgment, but of wondering whether she belonged somewhere or was just tolerated in it. Then she saw Daniel across the room. He was listening intently to an older man in a tux. But when his eyes caught hers, he smiled. It wasn't performative. It was quiet, reassuring, like home. And Layla knew. She hadn't come here to be liked. She'd come to be honest. And this room, this world, it would have to adjust to her presence, not the other way around. She didn't tell Daniel about the women on the balcony. Not that night. Instead, she kept dancing, laughing when someone made a joke about startup ice cream, smiling through 5 introductions where she was called Daniel's guest and not once by her name. But she noticed every time. And later, when the music faded and the crowd thinned, Daniel came up behind her. "You okay?" She turned, her expression composed. "Yeah, it's a lot, but I'm good." He looked like he didn't fully believe her. But he didn't press. They left the ballroom just before midnight. His car pulled around. The ride was quiet, comfortable, until Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then sighed. What she asked? He hesitated. "It's from my father." Layla raised a brow. "The one who tried to turn a rec center into a cigar lounge." Daniel smirked. "That's the one. What does he want?" "To meet. Tomorrow. Says he's heard things." Layla tilted her head. "Like what?" He didn't say. But something about Daniel's voice tightened. She let it go. For now. The next day, Layla returned to her workshop as usual. Halfway through a lesson on storytelling through photography, one of her students, Janelle, 19, quick-witted and sharper than glass, raised her hand. "Miss Layla." "Yeah." "You ever been in love with someone way out of your league?" The class laughed. Layla smiled. "Define out of your league." "Like they got private drivers and you got a Metro card." Layla laughed lightly. "Maybe. Once." "Was it worth it?" Layla paused, then answered truthfully. "It is, when it's love on both sides. Not charity, not curiosity. Love." Janelle nodded slowly. "Good. 'Cause I think your man's family's on TV right now." Layla froze. "What?" Janelle flipped her phone around. There on the screen was a live clip. Westwood Sr. speaks on legacy philanthropy and his son's public choices. Daniel's father, silver-haired and smug, stood at a podium in front of the Westwood Foundation banner. And then, clear as day, "We respect Daniel's passion for the people, but the Westwood name has always stood for excellence, polish, and elevated partnership. That's why we look forward to him finding someone truly aligned with our vision. Someone who understands what it means to build a legacy." The room went silent. Layla blinked, swallowed, smiled, then said, "Okay, class. Lesson 2. How to respond when someone tries to write your story for you." That night, Daniel showed up at her doorstep before she could text him. "I just saw it," he said out of breath. "You didn't know he'd speak." "I knew he'd want to meet," Daniel said. "I didn't know he'd use a podium to announce his taste in daughters-in-law." Layla folded her arms. "Do you agree with him?" His eyes widened. "What? Do you think I don't fit the vision?" "Layla." "Because let me tell you something, Daniel." Her voice didn't rise. It deepened. "I have spent my whole life fitting into boxes made by people who never asked my permission. I won't do it in love." Daniel stepped closer, jaw tight. "I would burn every box to keep you, Layla." She didn't flinch. "Then do it." They stood in silence, the kind that comes when two truths meet and refuse to budge. Finally, Daniel said, "I'm having lunch with him tomorrow. You're welcome to come." Layla raised an eyebrow. "Am I? I want you there, not to defend yourself, but to exist in the room he thinks he owns." She exhaled slowly, then nodded. "Fine, but I'm not shrinking for anyone." Daniel smiled softly. "I wouldn't want you any other way." The Westwood private dining room was more intimidating than the ballroom. Quiet old money elegance. No flash. Just power that didn't have to speak loudly to be heard. Layla walked in beside Daniel, wearing a tailored navy dress, her curls pinned with a single silver clip. His father was already seated, a man whose handshake probably felt like a contract. He rose politely. "Miss Brooks." Layla didn't flinch. "Mr. Westwood." He gestured to the seat across from him. She sat. Daniel sat beside her, not between them. That was intentional. The waiter brought coffee. No menace. This wasn't a meal. It was a statement. Westwood Sr. began with pleasantries, charity talk, recent board meetings, Daniel's foundation expansion. Layla listened, didn't interrupt. Let him fill the room with his own voice. And when he finally addressed her, it was with the thin civility of someone who doesn't believe in unnecessary cruelty, but also doesn't believe she should be there. You've made quite an impression on the public. Your speech on that rooftop very moving. Thank you, Layla replied evenly. Of course, with attention comes responsibility, especially when linked to our family. Daniel's jaw tightened, but Layla raised a brow. Are you suggesting I've been irresponsible? Not at all, Mr. Westwood said, folding his hands. I'm simply saying there's a standard, one we've curated for generations. Layla leaned forward, calm as still water. With all due respect, sir, I didn't ask to be curated. There was a pause, a long one. Daniel looked like he might laugh, but didn't. Mr. Westwood's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, with assessment. I admire your confidence, he said finally. I didn't come here for admiration, she replied. I came for clarity. And what do you want to be clear about? That I'm not going anywhere, she said. Not because of your approval, not in spite of your disapproval. I'm here because Daniel and I choose each other. Not your legacy, not your press releases, each other. Mr. Westwood sat back and for the first time said nothing. The lunch ended shortly after. No dessert, no toasts, just quiet acknowledgments and a curt, "Thank you for coming." As they exited the building, Daniel let out a breath, like he'd been holding it for years. You were incredible. Layla smiled faintly. I wasn't trying to be. Exactly, he said. Later that evening, Daniel received a single text from his father. She's not what I expected. She's better. Daniel didn't show it to Layla. He just saved it, in case there ever came a day when she needed to remember that she changed a room without raising her voice. That night, Layla returned to her apartment and collapsed on the couch, exhausted, relieved, unapologetically herself. Maria called, of course. I saw photos of you walking out that building like you owned it, she shrieked. I don't own anything, Layla said. Maria scoffed. Girl, you own every room you enter now. Before bed, Layla opened her notebook, the one she hadn't touched in weeks. She wrote just one line. I used to walk in and hope they'd see me. Now I walk in knowing I already see myself. The spring gala came exactly 1 year later. Different venue, different dress, same man waiting for her at the end of the room with a soft smile and a steadier heart. Layla arrived not on the arm of Daniel Westwood. She walked in alone, by choice, in a satin jumpsuit the color of stormy skies. Hair natural curls, proud eyes calm. People still stared. But this time, it wasn't scandal. It was curiosity, respect, some even admiration. Because by now, Layla Brooks wasn't just a name from a rooftop video. She had spoken at 5 national storytelling conferences, published a small essay collection, Rooms I've Cleaned, Words I've Kept, and launched an inner-city mentorship program for young women with voices like hers. Daniel met her at the staircase. He offered his hand not to lead, but to greet. Look at you, he whispered. She smirked, still not wearing heels. He grinned. Still looks like royalty. They moved through the room with ease now, not hiding, not flaunting. Just present, like two people who had survived public curiosity, private fears, and found something sturdy underneath it all. Later that evening, as a jazz trio filled the space with velvet notes, Daniel took the stage. He said a few words about vision, about change, about expanding their foundation's mission. Then he paused. And before we end tonight, he said, voice softening, I want to share something personal. Layla felt her chest tighten. Not out of fear, out of memory. Daniel continued. Some of you know my history. You've seen the headlines, the transitions, the press. He glanced toward her just briefly. But what you may not know is this. None of my so-called turnaround came from PR. He nodded slightly. It came from a woman who saw me before I became likable again. The room fell still. No gasps, just attention. She didn't fix me. She didn't save me. She simply reminded me that softness is strength, that silence doesn't mean ignorance, that dignity doesn't require a spotlight. Then looking right at Layla, and in a world that keeps asking her to shrink, she grew instead. Until the room had no choice but to adjust. Applause didn't come immediately, but when it did, it rose like a wave. Layla stood slowly, not to accept praise, but to accept the moment, on her own terms. After the event, they walked to the rooftop. Same view, same city, new version of them. Daniel handed her a folded piece of paper. She raised an eyebrow. Another job offer. No, he said, a question. She unfolded it. It wasn't a ring box. It was a short letter, handwritten. Layla, I've watched you become yourself. Not for me, not for anyone, but because you knew there was more inside you than this world allowed. I don't want to own that. I want to witness it. If someday your story and mine still feel aligned, let's write a new chapter together. At the bottom, one simple line. Not asking for a yes, just offering the space. Layla folded it slowly, looked out over the city, then said without looking at him, I won't marry into a legacy. I'll marry into love. Daniel replied, voice sure. That's the only thing I've ever wanted to give you. She didn't cry. She just reached for his hand and held it not tightly, but with all the certainty of a woman who knows her value isn't a surprise ending. It's the entire plot. 3 weeks after the gala, Layla sat in the back row of a high school auditorium in Queens. A young girl, maybe 15, all nerves and braces, was up on stage reading a poem. My grandma cleaned rich people's kitchens. I clean up my thoughts. She taught me how to wipe pain off the counter and never throw away joy. Layla blinked. Hard. Because this was the dream she hadn't known she'd been building. Not the room, not the stage, but the permission. For girls who looked like her to stand tall and say, this is mine too. After the event, Janelle, her old student, ran up to her. Did you cry? She teased. Layla laughed. I'm fine. Liar. Janelle grinned. You wept when I read my haiku about microwaves last semester. That was a surprisingly moving haiku. They hugged and Janelle whispered, seriously, thank you. If you hadn't shown up the way you did, I don't think I would have ever believed I belonged here. Layla pulled back, looked her in the eye. Don't ever wait for the world to approve your belonging. Take up space. Janelle nodded, eyes shining. Then added, also, your man is still fine. Layla rolled her eyes. Goodbye, Janelle. That evening, back in her apartment, Layla sat at her tiny desk. The draft of her second book stared up at her. Title Rooms of My Own. The essays were more personal this time, more complicated. There was one about her father who disappeared when she was 9. Another about the first time a boy said she was too much, too loud, too soft, too brown. And one about Daniel, not as a love interest, but as a mirror. A chapter titled The Man Who Didn't Save Me. She read that title again, smiled, then kept writing. Some days she still worked at the hotel, by choice, not for the money, but for the rhythm, the privacy, the joy of quiet folding in warm sheets, and nobody needing her to say something profound. Maria caught her once fluffing pillows in 402. Girl, you're rich in influence. You don't need to be here. Layla replied without looking up. I like being here. This place saw me when I was invisible. Maria shook her head. Well, I'm proud of you, she said. But if Beyoncé calls, I'm forwarding the line to me. Daniel never pressured her to move in. He didn't offer her penthouses or make symbolic gestures. Instead, he came over every Friday night with Thai food and no agenda. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they argued about legacy politics, which movies deserved Oscars and which ones were just long. But they never argued about them, because their story wasn't about trying to fit each other anymore. It was about honoring what they'd grown through, and choosing every week, every day, every quiet dinner to stay. On a Sunday afternoon, Layla walked past a bookstore in Harlem and saw a small poster in the window. Author Spotlight, Layla Brooks, Stories of Stillness, Strength in Speaking Anyway. It hit her harder than expected. She stood outside, wind pressing against her coat, and thought about every day she'd ever been made to feel small. Then walked in and bought a copy of her own book at full price, because women like her weren't meant to wait for discounts. They were meant to invest in themselves. Autumn came quietly. The city changed clothes, fiery leaves, longer shadows, coffee steam rising from paper cups. Layla walked through her old neighborhood one late afternoon wearing a sweater her mom had knitted years ago. The corners were fraying. She didn't care. Some things were meant to soften over time. She stopped in front of the old corner store. There in the window was a photo of her, taped beside a flyer for GED classes and a handwritten quote. She spoke, so we could hear ourselves. No name, no credit, just the echo of impact. And that was more than enough. That weekend she spoke at a small panel in Brooklyn. Only 30 people showed up. No glam. Just folding chairs, mismatched mugs of tea, and a microphone that squeaked every time someone shifted. She loved it. She always had. In the Q&A, a woman stood up. Late 40s eyes, tired but alert. "I'm a nurse," she said. "I've raised 2 kids on my own. I've never been in a newspaper, and I've never had anyone ask me what I think." She paused. "But when I read your book, it felt like you'd been watching my life the whole time." Layla swallowed, then answered softly, "You're the reason I write. You're the story. I just put it in ink." That night back home, she sat at the table with Daniel. The window was open. Their fingers touched across warm mugs of tea. Neither spoke much. Then Daniel said, "You've changed the air around you." She looked at him. "How so?" "It's softer, but sharper, like you finally stopped apologizing for being solid." She smiled. "Maybe I just stopped explaining." They didn't get engaged. Not that month. Not that year. But they kept choosing. Not because it was easy, but because they'd already done the hard part, being real. They spent Christmas at her sister's place, New Year's watching old movies, and every day in between building something that wasn't flashy, but felt like home. One morning, Layla opened her inbox to a message titled "Feature Request, Smithsonian Oral Histories." They wanted her voice, not her scandal, not her love life, not her underdog story, her mind. She said yes. And that afternoon, she went to the hotel, not to work, just to leave something behind. She slid a copy of her book into the staff break room. On the first page, she wrote, "For the ones who clean quietly, love loudly, and dream anyway, you matter. Always have." Then she left. As she walked down the street, the air crisp around her, someone called out from a stoop, "Hey, aren't you that woman from the—" Layla turned, paused, then smiled. "I'm a lot of things," she said. "Depends which chapter you're on. Some people enter the world loud, demanding space. Others, like Layla, enter softly, wondering if they're even allowed in." But over time, she taught us something rare, that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it folds, listens deeply, and waits until the room is ready to hear the truth. She never tried to impress anyone. She didn't chase titles. She simply stood firm in her kindness, again and again, even when it wasn't returned. And in doing so, she reminded us of something we forget too often, that the ones we overlook are often the ones holding everything together. In a world that asked her to shrink, she grew instead. And by growing, she made space for others quietly, beautifully, without asking for applause. So the next time someone walks past you in silence and simplicity, remember, there may be a whole story behind those tired eyes. Don't assume. Don't judge. And above all, be kind even when no one's watching. Because sometimes the kindest thing you'll ever do is simply see someone.